All right. Welcome back. Oh, wow. We are back for another stream. This is a little bit different than what we normally do, where we normally do it at 6:30 p.m. Let me just make sure that my sound is actually going through correctly. Wait, let's see here. Make sure everything is good. There we are. Alrighty. Sweet deal. So, in today's stream, we're going to be doing a lot having to do with source code review. And this is going to be something that a lot of people kind of struggle with, especially when it comes to breaking into application security and various kinds of white box pen testing that you will be seeing when you become a penetration tester. So we're going to dive right into it here in just a minute. See if there's any initial questions as per usual for the first, 2 to 3 minutes of the stream. And then from there, we will dive right into it and see how this thing goes. So let's get this party started, I would say. And all right. So it looks like there's not a whole ton of activity in the chat. That's completely fine. Maybe we'll grab some questions here in just a little bit, but let's dive right in to the content, shall we? So taking a look at this, we see here it is the exact same application. We're going to be looking at the Claude project that we were looking at yesterday. If you haven't seen that stream, be sure to check it out after this stream. And this was a ton of fun. Like I've mentioned previously, this was again through Claude. If we head on over to the challenges section, we could see that these were all the vulnerabilities that we could identify within this specific application. And we were able to chain a couple of these vulnerabilities, eventually leaking specific information, such as, password reset, or even identifying post and then using a cross-site scripting attack to then create an unauthenticated attack within the post parameters. But you could find that all within the other stream. I'm not going to really dive too much into that. I know that within our stream, however, in the last episode, in the last stream, we were trying to touch a little bit on remote code execution within the application. And I want to quickly showcase that for you guys because I messed it up during the stream and I wanted to make sure things were working properly. So inside of the file upload that we did, we were able to overwrite the app.py. So whenever the server was trying to spin up again, it will then prompt and retrieve that API request that we tried to insert into the app.py. If we head on over to the source code, let me quickly find it inside of the exploit, and then we'll dive right into more of the challenges and stuff of that with the source code review. But if we head on over to API shell, we could see that we do have the request arg here, and this is going to be CMD. So whenever the person types, let's say, /API/shell, and then you put a question mark, CMD equals, you could put in any sort of command, and then it'll specify saying that the CMD parameter isn't present. So if the person does access the API shell, it's going to show, missing CMD parameter. And then we also have the run, which is the CMD, and it's going to activate the shell module and capture the output as text. And then it's going to show us the std out right here as result.stdout in the JSONify format. With that being said, after you upload this over, you're going to be able to access it going over to shell, API/shell, and then when you click on it, you'll see that there is a missing CMD parameter. When we do /CMD, and then we could do something like ls, we can see here that we do retrieve the information here, and then there's always that secret directory, I guess, if you will. We can always do something such as ls-tag-la, and this is going to give us more information about maybe hidden directories that are associated with this specific machine. So I just wanted to show you the RCE and how it works because I finally got it working, but that is kind of the overview of the remote code execution. And I don't want to dive too deep into it. Maybe I'll do a full segment about how to go about bypassing, OS injection and things of that nature. So if that is something of interest to you guys, let me know in the chat and we will definitely look at that maybe in the following streams to come. But let's dive into what you're probably really thinking, which is the source code review. And we're going to start from the ground up. Now, Claude did a very good job in kind of organizing this a little bit for us. So I'm going to try to do my best to help you understand, because to be completely honest with you, I'm going in completely blind, black box. I have no idea what I'm about to get into, how messy this code may be, but just scrolling through it quick, we could see a couple of comments coming through Claude, so that is always a nice sign. So starting from the top, obviously you need your secret key, especially when it comes to Flask. You're going to want to put that for either a cookie or JWT. Inside of Flask, there is also the ability to use something called, I believe it's called like unsigned Flask or something like that, or Flask unsigned, which you can essentially try to crack this specific secret. And then from there, you'll be able to modify the token or the cookie to whatever you want, which is kind of neat compared to other, programming languages like ASPX or different kinds of frameworks that you could use. But in Flask in particular, you can use Flask unsigned, and maybe I'll do a full demonstration on that in the next episode. Here we just define the DB as well as the uploads, and then obviously the length of content you're allowed to insert. Here we just have some database help, just trying to get everything scheduled and set up for when you do go about running this onto your own local system as well. Hello, hello. How's everyone doing? So looking at it, we see here the flags, and I'm not going to really dive too deep into the initial setup script because this is literally just the application trying to set up correctly. And there's no vulnerabilities in here, right? Everything looks pretty standard, pretty easy. There is parameterization here, and you can identify parameterization within any form of SQL query just by seeing the question marks here and then variables over here. So there's no way for someone to insert any sort of data, and we'll dive into that here in just a minute. We see the auth stuff, which we're not going to really dive too deep into, and we see all of the routes that it has created over for us. So again, pretty neat, pretty cool, pretty easy to understand thus far. And let's dive into some of the challenges. So the first one is going to be challenge 1, which was the user enumeration that we found at the beginning of the stream yesterday. So we can see here that this goes to the API auth login. We see that there's a username and a password inside of a GET request, inside of a POST request, but these parameters will be retrieved from the JSON, which we could see here. So get JSON, and then from the data variable, we'll be getting both parameters, the username as well as the password. Then we'll go on to execute it. And by looking at it, we see that number one, there is proper parameterization. Like I said before, there is that question mark. And here we do see the variable, which means it's not going to be injectable. And that's key, especially when you try to identify SQL injections within specific source code. For instance, CVE hunting, right? You have as many source codes as you want to see within the GitHub repository. So you could take a look and see whether or not, they have specific parameterization. You can even create a grep or something of the like, where you can try to identify if there's a question mark in a query. And if there's not, there's a high probability that you'll probably identify an SQL injection. So definitely something to keep in mind when you try to look for that. But this in particular is going to be user enumeration. We can see here that it does bring out a generic error message with a quick, fast response time of 2 to 5 milliseconds. But down here, we can see that it does sleep for 0.15 seconds, which then you will be able to see all the information. So this is how you can identify whether or not a user is valid or not. Pretty basic, pretty easy, but again, at the same time, this isn't truly real world. You don't really see this all too often. Additionally, it does state here that it simulates bcrypt, which is very costly, and it could lead up to 150 milliseconds, if not more, depending on how much processing power there is. So for instance, this is simply just encoding the password, but if you also want to try something more in the real world, you may be stripping down all the user data as well, and maybe hashing a password or something like that to compare it. Whatever the case may be, the times may be off, it may be different. If that's the case, you probably found a user enumeration. Now, when it comes to bug bounty or VDP hunting, most of the time you're going to see this be an informational finding or a low finding. You're not really going to see anything too crazy unless you can chain it into, let's say, user enumeration to account takeover through a password reset flaw or through an OTP flaw. So something to keep in mind, this really is not going to be a high severity finding at all. This is going to be a low to informational severity within the bug bounty realm. If you do a penetration test, however, this would be a low in my opinion, again, unless you do if you start to chain things together. But for now, this is what we're going to, I guess, start with, right? So this is the first challenge done. And we'll move on to the second one, which is the mass assignment vulnerability. Now, as you remember from yesterday, we had a role parameter inside of the register. And when you get this specific request, you don't see that in the initial request. But within the response, you'll see the role built in. So if we look here, again, it's just grabbing the data from the post request. It's also setting the role by default to standard. And then it's sending whether or not the username or password are required. And if it is, it'll start to execute this select statement, which essentially just makes sure that the username is not available or is available. If it is not available, though, it will say that the account already exists, which again is another form of user enumeration. So looking at it, we could see that again, it does the whole password, hashing algorithm through an MD5 hash. And then from here, it does put in, again, parameterization, all of these different kinds of parameters. Now, something to keep in mind though is under here, we do see the if role is admin or moderator. It's going to go on and produce, I guess, a flag of some sort. And then it's going to also modify this user's role to whatever it may be, grab the flag and put it inside of the JSON. So again, this probably could be a little bit more real world, but I kind of told Claude to make it as basic as possible just to give you an understanding of what you should look for when it comes to finding these kind of vulnerabilities. But do know that they could be way more sophisticated than this. This again is just an example. But this is the second challenge, which is again is mass assignment. And we'll take a look at the third challenge. And again, if you do have any questions, please let me know in the comment section or in the chat, I should say. This is not a video yet, but I do see a question here, which is, which app is it? This is the app from yesterday. It is from Claude, and I'm going to be posting it on the GitHub probably in the next couple of days so you can try it for yourself. And if you do have any struggles, you can come back to the stream and rewatch it if you so choose. Someone says live only streams on YouTube. Yes, that's correct. I don't have a Twitch currently. I'm sticking to YouTube because I feel that that just brings the most value to people. I don't know how many people actually have Twitch accounts nowadays. Maybe Twitch is still popular. I used to live stream on Twitch and I don't know how popular it is. So let me know. Maybe Twitch is something that I can also do because I have the ability to do multi-streams. So let's take a look at challenge number 3, which is the password reset code inside of the response. And again, inside the forgot password, we could see same deal, right? Everything is kind of staying consistent right now. There are 2 specific vulnerabilities associated with this specific challenge though. The first one is how weak the code is. So the code is only 6 characters long. This is okay if it's an OTP. Would I recommend 8? Of course. But because this is just a password reset token, you don't really want it to be 6. You want it to be as long as possible, let's say 32 characters, and so that way it's not eligible to be brute forced if rate limiting is not applied. And we could see almost in all of these routes that rate limiting is not applied. Most of the time you're going to see it inside of a wrapper. That's what it's called in Flask, and it's going to be something like, @ rate limiting, and then inside of here it'll be like seconds is equal to 30 or whatever the case may be. This just ensures that rate limiting is in place, but again, because rate limiting is not, you don't obviously see that. So instead of being able to brute force, you probably want to set the K to be, let's say 32, and this is just going to make the string a lot larger and a lot bigger in the sense of being able to do a ton of brute forcing attacks on that token because they're not going to really want to be able to do that. In addition to that, we do see that the string does have the dot digits as well. You're going to want to do everything under the sun having to do with, characters. So for instance, you could do A through Z, you could do A through Z like this as well, and then you can do 0 through 9 as well. This is a pretty good baseline. I haven't really seen too many people using special characters like the @ or the hashtag. It's not really known when it comes to these kind of codes, but definitely using alphabetical and numerical values is definitely strongly encouraged. But that being said, we can also see that there is an expiration, which is okay. But inside of the response, however, we also see that there is a reset code here, and it is showing within the response. You never want this to happen for obvious reasons, because now we have user enumeration to account takeover, because we can now get the reset password. And if we do find a reset password endpoint, which is down here, we can then go and put in this code, modify the user's password, and now we have account takeover. So that easy user enumeration that we originally got went from a low to probably a high or even a critical, depending on what kind of usernames they're using. If it's an email address, it may be easier to retrieve those usernames, or the username. So, excuse me. So, for instance, my username is tennisplayasec. So, I easily identifying tennisplayasec is fairly common, especially through all social media accounts. And if you just put that into this website and you run it, you'll see that I am active on the website. And then from there, if they do have a password reset flaw, then it will lead to my account being taken over. Now, with an email address, I should say it is a little bit more challenging, but not impossible. You'll kind of want to get a niche of who exactly is using this specific application. And then from there, you can kind of gauge who you're trying to target and then start attempting different kinds of email addresses. So this is the password reset code in the response. And again, if you do have any questions, please let me know in the chat. I'm happy to pause here and always go back and try to explain things a little bit better if I'm not explaining them well enough. So let's head on over to challenge number 4. So brute force reset code. Again, this is kind of the same thing that I mentioned before in the sense of rate limiting. Because of how small this code is, it's only a character size of 6 and only numerical values. You can easily brute force this about 1,000,000 times and identify the correct code, which then you can do account takeover. So very simple, very basic, very straightforward. And this one again is the exact same thing. I'm not going to really dive too deep into this, but again, it's just a rate limiting flaw. So I'm not really going to go too crazy with that. So here we had stored cross-site scripting, and we have it inside of that post request that I mentioned before. Firstly, login required is valid when it comes to posting, but when it comes to getting the actual posts, you don't need to be logged in. This is an unauthenticated attack, but you do need to have authenticated permissions to have a stored cross-site scripting in place. So just something to keep in mind. We also have the title and content being sent through a JSON request, and this is going to be the title and content is going to be required. Again, we do have parameterization, and then we see here that it does grab the identifier. And if there is, let's say, inside of the content, if there is something going on within it, it's going to then pull it down and execute it on the back end, which will then be retrieved on the front end, which if we look inside of, not really sure. So we'll have to come back over here. Let's just go to API post. This is going to be a routing problem, which I think if we do like /post or something, we could see what is going on here. And we can see here that it's grabbing this execute command and it's grabbing all the posts. And within the post variable inside of this template, which we'll go to in a second, we can then execute whatever we want within the post. So let's head on over to the template and quickly take a look at the post HTML and see what exactly is going on. So we're just going to open it up on the side and let's take a look. And we can see how easy it is to perform this kind of attack. So we can see here that everything kind of stays the same. Everything is okay with the post.title. That's going to be safe. However, within here, we do have the pipe safe. And this is something that you should never do within Flask because you don't really want people to execute, HTML or XSS. And if you do want HTML, you can keep safe, but you're going to have to put backend parameters in place to ensure that they're not going to be able to execute any form of cross-site scripting. But it's definitely a little bit more challenging if you do it this way. So I don't really recommend ever doing safe, but this is also another thing you can look for when it comes to CV hunting or white box pen testing. So definitely look for this pipe safe, or it can even be without the space, I believe. So if you just see something like this, chances are it may be vulnerable to one of two things. The first is server-side template injection, which can lead you to RCE, or the second one is going to be, of course, cross-site scripting. So something to definitely keep in mind. And we're going to go down the list a little bit more and take a look. And we're going to see what else there is. So this is the store cross-site scripting. And I don't know if you guys can hear my cat in the background. So I will be right back and let him out of the room. One sec. Alrighty. So let's jump right back into it. There's always a cat involved. I feel like in every stream I'm going to have a cat interruption or a cat intermission. Maybe I should start calling it that. We should do like kitty time or something where I bring out a new cat. I mean, I have so many cats. It's incredible. No, there's only two of them, but you did meet one of them yesterday. She's actually sitting on the bed, so maybe she'll come over and say hi. We will see. But for now, we'll just continue on and see what actually happens. So let's continue and let's take a look at what is going on with this one, which is HTML injection. Now, with HTML injection, something that I want to preface by saying is HTML injection is not the same as cross-site scripting. While obviously it could lead to, defacing a website, it's not really as impactful. Now, you can obviously put stuff like meta tags to redirect people automatically. You can put, hrefs and stuff like that. So people, when they click the link, they'll be automatically redirected to a different website, things of that nature. But with cross-site scripting, you have a lot more flexibility because you can even hide that specific payload from the user even seeing it. And that can result in keyloggers and cookie stealing and all this other fun stuff. So maybe I will bring out the cat. We'll see. We'll see. Maybe I'll bring her out just for a little bit and say hi. Um, but we can see here that we have the JSON. It's sending over a message, and we're going to again just be retrieving the flag, which doesn't really matter all too much. And then we're going to post, and in JSON, it's going to be flag here. Now we can go back over to the /contact and see what is going on. And all it's doing is it's showing the contact.html, which I don't really know if this is the correct one that we're thinking of, but maybe it is. Maybe it's not. Maybe we'll have to try out and see for ourselves again. Going in completely blind with you guys because I have no idea what I'm about to get into. So let's take a look at this HTML quick and see what we have. So it doesn't look like anything too crazy, right? Everything kind of just stays the same. We see that there is a post, and in here we do also see that there is this script tag information. When we do this, it is grabbing the name, the email, and the message. It's pushing it over or posting it over to /API/content in a JSON format, as we can see here. And then from there, it's going to start doing some HTML magic. From there, it'll do a preview section where inside of the API preview, it's going to post to that specific endpoint and retrieve the information, such as the message. And because it is using inner HTML and we preview that data, it's going to result in HTML being shown. So whenever you see inner HTML and you see raw data like this, you definitely have something. It's a matter of how do you get to that specific endpoint and how do you go about executing it. But inner HTML and dangerously inner HTML from, I think it's React.js, if I'm not mistaken, those two things are very vulnerable to these kind of attacks. So unless they have proper parameterization and sanitization and everything of the like validation within the user data, chances are it's going to be vulnerable to this kind of attack. So always check on the inner HTML. It's not always 100% guaranteed you're going to find an XSS or HTML injection, but you have a pretty good likelihood from what I've seen in the real world. So something to definitely keep in mind. And we will probably do a quick AMA here in just a minute. Let's do maybe one more. The fun one, SQL injection. Yes, so you'll be able to get the page code. I'm going to submit this over to GitHub and you can strip it down. It uses a Docker container, so all you have to do is run docker compose up and everything is there for you. It's very straightforward, very easy, and inside of the readme.md file, I'm going to also explain how to go about doing it so you can try it out for yourself. So this is something that we ended up missing inside of yesterday's stream, which was the SQL injection. And the reason being was I didn't do any brute forcing. I didn't do GoBuster. I didn't do anything. So it's just a happenstance that I missed it. But we do have API auth legacy, which this does actually happen in the real world. I have seen before where it's like EOL for end of life or legacy or, just something that should not be there in production. And this always has some sort of flaw in it unless they're simply upgrading it to make it look a little bit more modern. But we're going to grab the username and password. And as we can see here, the query is a little bit different, right? The query does not have the question marks anymore. It has the variables. And whenever you inject variables like this, it's never going to work. It's always going to be vulnerable. Now, there are rare cases, right, where you can sometimes escape the single quote and things like that. But I always advise, especially clients and bug bounty hunters and everything of the like, if you do spot this, you would probably want to tell them that they need to use parameterization, just so that way you're not, spewing out variables in case for whatever reason, if this query does, let's say it's not vulnerable now, let's say it changes or something like that, you want to make sure that it's not vulnerable regardless of what happens. And by doing parameterization, you're essentially making it so there's no way the user can modify the SQL query. So something to definitely keep in mind, and we're going to quickly extract the query here, and then it's going to grab all that data and then push us over to the login page, or to the dashboard, excuse me. But again, a pretty easy thing to find within source code. You just look for question marks inside of queries. So that being said, I'm going to pause here for a second. Let's see if we have any questions in the chat. Let's head on over to the intermission section. We are 30 minutes into the stream now, and look at all the chat going on. I need to catch up a little bit. This is getting crazy. Where do we go to get a high performance custom desktop PC? I would recommend going to PC Part Picker and making your own. I could try to provide some links to you with my setup if that does help. My setup is kind of on the higher end. I wouldn't recommend anyone spending so much money on their PC. But it definitely helps me when it comes to video creation and content creation. That's why things are pretty smooth on these streams. There's really no downtime on these streams like my other computer that I would have streamed from if I didn't make this PC myself. But if you do want the information regarding my PC, please let me know, and I am way more than happy to give it to you. Just that way you could try to build it yourself. I tend to buy from Newegg. Yeah, Newegg is pretty good. I would strongly encourage you to definitely check out PC Part Picker though, because they, you can customize everything. Right now, if you're not familiar with PC, building and stuff like that, maybe it's not for you, and that's completely okay. Do I have like a gaming PC recommendation or a high-end PC recommendation? No. Just because I feel that you have a lot more flexibility when it comes to, really making your own. You want to make sure that you have a lot of RAM in there. You want to make sure that you have a good CPU and a GPU. Now, it depends on your workload as well. I mean, if you want to run Kali, you probably want at least, 16 gigabytes of RAM. I try to go with like 32 if you could, just because it eats up RAM like crazy, as well as a nice GPU in case you want to do hash cracking or things of that nature. But again, I don't really know how many hashes you do plan to crack, especially in the web realm. So something to definitely think about. Bug bounty parameterization. Yes. Parameterization is very important, especially when it comes to SQL injections, 100%. Alrighty. If there are any questions, now is the Ask Me Anything section before we hop back into the code. There will be another section for Ask Me Anything, but right now we're pausing the stream here, so that way you guys can ask any questions you so choose or want. More than happy to answer anything cybersecurity related. Doesn't have to be about APIs or web. It could literally be about anything. It doesn't really matter to me. Because at the end of the day, these streams are meant to assist you and help you grow in the field of cybersecurity. Alrighty. So it doesn't look like we have any questions currently, and that's okay. We will head back into the live stream then and continue on over. I think we're almost already halfway done with this source code review, which is super nice and super handy. So we have an IDOR as our next challenge, and we'll take a look at the code here. And of course, login is going to be required on this API users endpoint, and it's going to take in a user ID. Now it's going to be executing the ID through a parameterization. You can kind of see the difference here. I don't really know if you can or can't, and it looks like you can. So here I'm just going to quickly go back to parameterization. Here we can see that the variables are built into and baked into the SQL query. However, inside of the DB execute in here, which is secure, we see that it does have that parameterization, making it a question mark and then appending whatever parameters you need. So pretty handy, pretty easy, and pretty slick. Alrighty. So let's see what else we have. So again, this IDOR parameterized, that's good. User is not found, that's okay. And all it's going to be doing is it's going to be checking the session, I guess. So if the user ID does not equal the session, it's going to grab the flag and then submit that user's regardless of the fact to the JSON. So the AI almost had this correct in the sense that it should be checking the user ID as well as the session user ID. However, it still appended the user into a dictionary and submitted it into the JSON through the response. Not something you want to do. From here, what it should do is it should immediately send over a response like return, this isn't allowed, with a status code of 500 or something like that for internal server error or something along those lines. Or you could even keep it to 200 to make it a little bit more obscure. I don't know, whatever you want to do to help you out when it comes to development. But this is something that I see way too often is IDOR vulnerabilities or BOLA attacks within APIs, and it's turning into a serious problem, especially with vibe coding applications right now. So something to definitely look out for, especially in real world applications, because they are absolutely scattered. I can't tell you how many times I've spotted IDOR vulnerabilities, and in my matrix, I'm pretty sure IDOR vulnerabilities are my number one vulnerability alongside SQL injections. So they are both very much prominent in today's web applications and stuff like that. They're still being seen all over the place. So definitely stuff to look out for. Let's continue down the line. We do have path traversal, and this is something that I haven't really seen all too often in the real world. You will see it sometimes, but often you're not really going to be seeing it all too much, unless you're really dealing with file upload functionality or just files in general with a name parameter or a file parameter. From there, you can obviously find path traversal, which we're going to be able to see here. And essentially, it's going to grab the name. It's not going to do any sanitization on this name whatsoever. It's simply going to append it to the /app/uploads. So for instance, it's not doing any real check. So what you can do is something like /app/uploads. And what's going to happen is, let's say you have a thing like test.txt as your file being uploaded. So this right here, test.txt, is your file being uploaded. If you rename this test.txt to something like .. it's going to now move it into the app directory. And if you do it again, it'll move it into the root directory, so on and so forth. So you can essentially take over any sort of file that is on this file system. You can even start deleting a bunch of things from it because it's going to start overriding things depending on the permission set on the Linux box or the Windows box that you are looking at. So this is definitely not a proper way of doing file upload or navigating between the files that you do upload on an application. So you're going to want to make sure that there are protections in place, such as making sure .. isn't there, making sure that there's no weird characters or variables, maybe even doing a check quickly to see if that name is even in the database. And if it's not, why would you even bother trying to start doing this? Like, there's no true point of doing it. Let's say like the name already exists or something like that. You're not going to want to put that in there. If they try to escape the uploads directory, you're not going to want to do that either. You can always do a quick replace as well. So replacing, dots with dashes or, any sort of special characters. So like a slash, well, maybe not. Yeah, I would say you could probably do a slash as well. You can make that into a dash unless it's just a specific whitelisted, extension. For instance, PNG, TXT, things like that. Then you'll just check to make sure that it's a valid, file name, and then also a valid extension. If you have those two things and you compare the MIME types as well, you should be good to go. You can also look at something called magic bytes, which I think we'll get into a little bit more inside of the unrestricted file upload here. But that's kind of this vulnerability, very straightforward, where they just don't sanitize the path that the user is trying to access through the name parameter. Alrighty, let's take a look at challenge number 11, which again is unrestricted file upload. So inside of here, we can see that we have the API upload. And then here we do see that there are a couple of extensions blocked, but there's no allow list, I don't believe. Oh, here it says no allow list. So there's nothing going on with the allow list. And I strongly believe that you should have an allow list over a block list. And the reason being is because why not just make sure that those specific extensions are in place instead of trying to block everything under the sun? For instance, if you do have a block list, it's okay to have this, but what if it's on a Windows server? Did you know that there's something called PSM1, which acts very similar to PowerShell PS1, except this is now a module file inside of PowerShell, and it could still technically be executed depending. You also have something like .bat, which it has in there, and I'm sure there are other extensions that I just can't think of off the top of my head. But this definitely is not a secure way of doing it. In addition to that, there is no form of validation or sanitization of the file name. So you're just kind of spewing it out there and then uploading it to the server without actually thinking before you do. So this is the file upload because they're not using an allow list, and they're also not using something called magic bytes, which I want to take a quick minute for you guys to understand just a little bit. So let's head on over to Google and type in magic bytes for files and take a look, and it looks like I'm going to get blocked and need to fail a capture quick to get this working. Let's see if I can get it first try. Let's see if I'm a robot or not. I don't know. I don't even know if that is a bike or if that's a wheelchair. I'm not gonna lie to you. I think I may be failing them because this is I don't understand what's going on. There are so many. Can I just be verified? No. Okay. Sounds good. Sounds good. We're going to just go to Firefox and do it that way because I cannot be bothered. So let's go to Magic Bytes in file for files. And we're going to do, let's say, I think it might have to be, nope, Wikipedia already shows it. That's okay. And these are the magic bytes for all the different kinds of files that you can possibly create on the web or just as a whole on the internet. And you can see all these different kinds of magic bytes. So for instance, if we go to, let's say, PNG, we can see here that there are a couple magic bytes that you're going to want to look for. And if these magic bytes aren't exact, then you know that you have something malicious or something potentially malicious, and you don't want to allow that to be uploaded to your server. So by adding this also as a protection, you could have this, you could have the extensions, you could have the MIME type, and you can also have, sanitization of the file name. That's a pretty solid foundation for making sure that unrestricted file upload is not going to happen. Just some recommendations for you when you try to go on bug bounty programs, BDPs, CV hunting. You can throw that inside of the recommendation section because it's something that you probably don't really see all too often, but when you do see it, you're trying to think to yourself, well, how do I go about remediating this stuff? And I don't really see a lot of people talking about magic bytes and making sure that the first couple of bytes actually match what what the file type is supposed to be. So if you take the extension and then you match that extension with the file bytes, the first couple, so for instance, PNG has how many? 8, it looks like. If you compare for the first 8 bytes, if it's different, it's not going to work, and you probably just want to leave it alone. So that's kind of magic bytes in a nutshell. I know I went through that fast. If you do have any questions, let me know. Happy to go over them with you. Let's take a look. What do we have here? We have, when testing for mass assignment, what do you look out for? So I look for the response, really. There's no true way to guess parameters within, the request that you provide. But I would say that if you look at the response and you see that the parameters within your request do not match the response, there may be a chance that one of those parameters will reflect and cause a mass assignment vulnerability. So for instance, inside of, let's say, here, I'll show you a perfect example actually, because this is exactly what the app is for. Let's go back over here, sign in. Let's go to create one, and we're going to do a random username and password. Doesn't really matter. We're going to quickly capture this request over on Burp Suite. Just take a look at what is going on. Send to repeater. send, and the account already exists. So let me just try tests. And we can see here that we do see a different parameter. So this is kind of what I'm talking about when it comes to mass assignment vulnerabilities. So after you register, we see we only have username, password, and email. However, if you look over at the role on the response, that's not in here. So there is a chance that this could be a mass assignment vulnerability. So when we copy this on over and we modify the request to say role, and then let's say admin, for instance, when we click on send, we're going to need to modify this username once again. And let's do this. And I don't know why all of a sudden it's not working. Oh, I have a comma there. Let's do that again. We can see here that we now have the role set to admin. So this is probably the easiest way to identify mass assignment, especially like it says here, role escalation. It's very, very easy to do. And a lot of people tend to miss this vulnerability simply because they don't check their response alongside the request. So something to definitely keep in mind there when it comes to exploiting this kind of vulnerability. So let's continue here and take a look at what else we have within this source code. Here we have the redirect, which is pretty basic. Essentially what it's doing is it's going to just send the next parameter to, by default, dashboard. And then if you want to change this, you can, and then it'll automatically redirect you to whatever website you want. This will be through the HTML page, which I don't really know. Maybe it's inside of here. I'm not entirely sure. We could see if this is the correct page or not. Let's take a look. And we can see that there's the next, and then it goes over to and just does a bunch of things with the elements. So I'm not really sure where this vulnerability comes into play, unless I'm looking at it wrong, which totally could be the case. Again, going in completely blind with you guys. I'm trying to find things on the fly here. I don't actually see where it would be located. Maybe there's another thing called like callback or something. Nope. Maybe there's a route called, I don't know, integration. So integrations only goes to the integrations to HTML. So I don't really know how exactly that works, because I didn't see anything that would technically redirect you besides having that JSON there. And even then, the JSON won't automatically redirect you. So I don't really know what this is doing exactly. Unless I missed it. If I did miss it, let me know in the chat and we'll go back to it. But we will continue down the line. And this is a pretty interesting attack, which I honestly didn't think that Claude would do something like this, but it added GraphQL, which is kind of cool because I don't think I show a lot of GraphQL in my videos. I apologize for that because I suck at GraphQL. I'll be the first to admit I cannot do GraphQL to save my life. So being able to see something like this and try to wrap my mind around it is going to be pretty cool because I've never actually seen GraphQL in the wild within code. I've only seen it on web applications on the front end. So let's take a look here. So this is a post request going to the GraphQL endpoint in the API, I guess the API directory or the API endpoint, API GraphQL. We have a query, which is going to be within the post request using JSON as per usual. And then we also have a __ schema or introspection query or __ type. And if that's true, it's going to retrieve the flag and also grab the GraphQL schema, which is also up here. We can see that's just going to retrieve all that specific information. And if you do end up obtaining the admin secret and or the internal config, we'll be able to retrieve some additional sensitive information there as well. Again, pretty easy. And whenever it comes to GraphQL, you always want to recommend to disable the GraphQL introspection. You don't want the schema to be shared with anyone just because that can lead to additional vulnerabilities. Let's say you have a query, but you also have a mutation and you forget about that mutation and that leaks sensitive data, or you can override people's data because there's improper authorization. It could lead into a serious problem. So being able to revoke that completely is definitely wise, but there's also something called Claire Voyager. I believe that's the name of it. So let's pull up Firefox again and let's type in Claire Voyager. I believe that's the name. I'm not mistaken. Maybe not. Clairvoyager. Let's do like maybe GraphQL. Here we go. Clairvoyance. That's the name of it. And is it though? It is. Okay. So if introspection is disabled, you may still be able to retrieve specific information from the schema depending on how it's configured within the Polo server, where it essentially will start spewing random parameters at you. And from there, you can start to figure out what the schema looks like based on these parameters. And I'm pretty sure it also does a complete brute force of your GraphQL as well, which is kind of nice. Yeah, I guess it does because there's word list here as well. So I haven't actually played too much with this. Maybe I'll make another demo video, or we can maybe even do it on live stream and learn GraphQL together, where we can dive into clairvoyance and take a look and see what we can do with it, because this is a really cool tool that I wish I used in the wild more often, but I just don't get enough GraphQL endpoints to really do much with it. So if you have used it, let me know in the comments, because I'd be pretty interested to hear your opinion about that specific tool. Let's go down the line, and I think we only have 2 more left before we get back to our AMA session. We have the token here, and this is simply just a no lockout policy, right? Again, rate limiting is a huge problem with this. So you're going to want to make sure rate limiting is in place. I'm not going to go deep into it. But just making sure rate limiting is there is honestly the best fix. And also it just allows brute forcing, which should never happen, especially when it comes to the password, especially if the password policy is really, really bad. You don't want people to get their accounts taken over through this endpoint. It's not a good look for you or the company. So again, a pretty easy vulnerability to identify and look at. And then the API health is something that I think a lot of people forget about. I forgot about it in yesterday's stream, but API health, a lot of these companies will use a health endpoint, whether it be /health / API /health /check-in /checkup, ping, pong, whatever the case may be. There may be sensitive information that does get displayed within these health checks. So something to definitely keep in mind. And here we also have unauthenticated debug users, where it'll basically spew out all of the user's information, including their passwords. So let's quickly take a look at this, because we did not do this in the other live stream yesterday. So let's take a look and see what it looks like. And we can see here that there is some password hashes over here. We see the email, the identifier, and everything else in between, the role, whatever the case may be. And then you can obviously take this, use CrackStation, use Hashcat, use whatever you want, crack these said passwords, and then from there, you essentially have full control of the application, or you can take over people's accounts, which again is super, super cool. And that looks like it's really all. Like I said, I'm going to be sending and giving you guys this specific web so you could try it out for yourself and you could practice. I could make more of these if you want and make them progressively more challenging, and just to see how your skill set goes. And if you do want me to make videos about that or do a live stream, please feel free. I believe that the next live stream we should do, I do see Jesse in the chat, so we could see, but maybe we'll do a full API sec scanner video going through Crappy or going through a custom API that API sec and MRE security do build custom using AI, and we're going to see how well the AI does. Claude, I would say, for this specific demonstration, did a pretty good job, especially with what I gave it. I said, make it semi-vulnerable with unauthenticated endpoints and treat it like a CTF, which is exactly what it did, and I think it came out pretty dang good, if I'm going to say so myself. But that really is all when it comes to the source code review. But if we do have any questions, please let me know. We are looking at 52 minutes on the stream thus far. I'm happy to hang out for a little bit longer if anyone does have any questions. If there's anything that you want to see within these streams, or you do want to see a video on, again, please let me know in the chat, because I'm always down to make new content, make new friends during that content creation process. So if that is something of interest to you and you want to assist with the content creation on MRE security, please let me know. And I am more than happy to, to make that happen with everyone. So let's see if anyone does have any questions, and we will take it from there. Let's see. What else? Let's do something like, so something that I also want to bring to you guys' attention, which I think is kind of cool. I'm gonna quickly close out a burp suite because we are essentially done with all this stuff. But something that I want to bring to you guys is the EWPTX certification from INE. If you don't know what INE is, it is a training platform where they have a bunch of different training. I mean, you're talking about tons of training for a pretty decent price point of, I think it's only $700 or something like that. It's a little bit costly, but you get literally everything under the sun. It is fantastic. And I love this platform simply because of how easy it is to use. And they have certifications associated with almost every course that they have. I've taken numerous of their courses. I believe I'm on my 5th or 6th certification with them thus far. And I would say that this is a okay certification. I would really hate to bash, such a good company and what they've done for me. I just recently took and passed the EWPTX V3 certification, and I may make a full video on this as well as make a full blog write up about it because I was a little bit disappointed. Just to give you a bit of background regarding the EWPTX, there was a report writing section that you were allowed to do in the V2 version that no longer exists in the V3. And I was a little bit disappointed to start there. The second thing is the questions that you are provided, which are all multiple choice, they are quite vague. And you tend to second guess yourself on a lot of them because they don't give you explicit, of exactly what they're looking for or exactly what they want. So you're kind of just stuck in limbo thinking, hey, is this the correct answer or is it incorrect? And you kind of need to gauge where you are in that stance. But overall, the course content is pretty damn solid, I would say. Now, I already took the course, so looking at the course and reviewing the course, there wasn't a lot of new knowledge for me. But if you are trying to break into the web application security space, I strongly encourage you to do so with this course specifically because I'm pretty sure it's like 40 hours or something like that, 48 hours of course material. And they go through a ton of different attacks, including API attacks, which is kind of nice. Again, on the exam, you're going to see a lot of this stuff on it. You're going to see just a bunch of variety of attacks, to be honest. Like, you may see RCE, you may see SQL injection, you may see anything under the sun regarding security. So if you do want to practice and try this out, feel free. We are officially, semi-officially, I don't really know what you want to call it, part of the influencer program at INE. And essentially, what does this mean for you? Well, this means that you get $100 off whenever you do purchase on INE because you're supporting the MRE Security YouTube channel. So if you do want to help and support the YouTube channel, by all means you can. And if you do want to take a course on them, all you have to do is type in this specific code and you will immediately get $100 off on any purchase of INE. This does not include promotions from INE themselves. This is outside. So whenever a promotion is not going on, you will always have a $100 guarantee taken off using this specific code here. And I do have a referral link down in the description of this live stream as well. So if you do want to support the channel, please click on it. It is an affiliate link, and I do get a small commission of whatever you do purchase on INE. Not trying to make this into a sales pitch, but if you do want to help support the channel, this is definitely one way to do so. So definitely keep that in your back pocket in case you do want to take the EJPT, EWPTX, EWPT, any certification or course material, honestly, on INE, you can get with $100 off using that code. And you do get a free exam voucher as well. Sorry, a free retest voucher as well, which is also super, super handy. But I would say this is a pretty good certification. I'm going to dive into it a little bit more within the blog. So just something to keep in mind. But that being said, I'm going to hop back on over to the intermission section because I know that sounded a little bit like a sales pitch, and I'm sorry about that, but I wanted to make sure you guys knew that that was also an option where you can save some money on the INE platform and also help support the MRE Security brand. There will be a merch store coming out in the next, hopefully, 2 weeks or so. I'm still working on it. I'm trying to get it out as quick as possible. I've gotten a lot of messages about people um, asking if I do have a merch store, and I never really thought about it until people started asking. So if you do want the Emory Security merch, it's going to be dropping here very, very soon. And yeah, I'm looking so forward to that because I may turn it into like a whole meme, and we may just have a bunch of fun, honestly, with that merch store. So we'll have to see. But if no one has any questions, I think we may call this stream a little bit short today. I was hoping to go an hour and a half, 90 minutes. We're currently at 60 minutes, which is completely fine, but I don't really have too much content left. I was hoping that maybe the source code review would be a little bit longer, but it looks like a lot of the challenges that we did were the same, remediation efforts and things of that nature. So it wasn't too much to go over. Probably only 10 vulnerabilities total to look at. But if you found this helpful, please let me know. Again, I'm trying to stream at least once or twice a week. Do you guys prefer the streams over the video, or do you want to see both? Do you want to see some videos as well as some live streams? Because I'm absolutely loving these live streams and chatting with you over making videos by myself. So let me know what you think, because I'm game for absolutely anything at this point. I keep looking back and forth. Apologies for that. I'm trying to either read the chat or also look at my other screen to make sure I'm not missing anything. Um, so please do let me know what you think. And yeah, I mean, not a whole lot going on here. I love the streams. Okay. It's awesome to hear. I'm glad you enjoy them. I love making them, to be honest, and I'm hoping that they become more interactive. I've spoken to Jesse about this, and we may start doing, voiceovers on the Discord. So if you want to hear me talk, I guess, but you have to see the stream on the YouTube channel, but at least you'll be able to conversate with me on the Discord channel, which may be a huge plus for people who maybe don't want to use the YouTube chat, but they want to use the Discord chat or something like that. We would have a moderator from API Sec doing a full moderation on the Discord in case I do miss something, because I'm going to be streaming to the audience on YouTube and looking mainly at my YouTube over Discord. But that is an option and something that if you guys are interested in, I'm more than happy to also do. What did Jesse say? What's the smart thing that Jesse said? Bro can't get Bro can get root access but can identify a traffic light. I would say I am a robot. I am Mr. Robot, and someone called me Mr. Robot yesterday, which I thought was hysterical. Yeah, I literally am a robot. I can't solve captchas to save my life. I can't do it. They're so confusing to me because if you have a little corner, a little piece of the traffic light, does that mean that you have to click on it too? Like I have no idea. Um, but let me know, I guess, what you guys do, because maybe I'm just an idiot or overthinking it. So maybe keep me in check, Jesse, if I'm doing captchas wrong. We'll do a full-blown video about how to solve a captcha with Evan. Um, but yeah, I know that I mentioned kitty time. Okay, hold on. I'm gonna be right back. I'm gonna bring the cat out. One sec. Oh, alrighty. We are back. We're back, and Allie is ready to hack. This is how we do things around here. I don't even know if you could see her. Can you see her? The little fur ball. Um, Maybe we should start doing kitty time. I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you guys think we should start doing kitty time where she tries to hack things? I have no idea. You haven't met my other cat though. My other cat is a little bit vicious. So anyway, I'm gonna put you down so you can go back to bed now. Oh, sorry for disturbing her slumber. But that being said, I think we're gonna wrap it up for today because, bro, when stream stop, we get 3 more views. Why not again drop? I don't know. I don't know. I've been seeing it. It's funny because it fluctuates from like 11 and then it jumps up to 18 and then it goes back down to 16 and then 12 and then back up to 18 and then 2. So I have no idea what's going on. There's a lot going on in the chat. A lot going on the YouTube channel as well. But super weird, which is completely fine. I mean, things fluctuate. People get downtime, especially when it comes to live streams because of all the packets coming through. It could just be lag, things of that nature. I mean, I don't really know how far back you guys are from me. But that being said, I'm going to wrap up the stream here. I hope you all did enjoy. And if you did, please like, comment, and if you want to support the channel, subscribe. And I will see you in the next stream. Take care.